Hi everyone, this video is going to be about how to easily and cheaply catch striped sea perch off of a kayak. So I have a full-time job, a family including 3 teenagers and all of their activities, a house, all that goes with it, so I don't have a lot of opportunities to get out and go fishing. When I do get out on the water, I commonly don't have as much time out on the water as I would like, so I try to spend as much of that time fishing as possible. So with that in mind, I try to do all my rigging ahead of time so that I'm not having to do that on the water. So I have everything on the table here that I'm going to be using in the setup for fishing, and also once we're out on the water. I'll break it down step by step of how I rig everything up, and then once we're out on the water, I'll show you how to use it and how to catch the fish. Okay, so for the rod and reel, it's a very simple, very forgiving setup. It's not really critical that you choose exactly the right components. You're mostly going to be able to use whatever you have. If you fish in salt water now, you probably have something that will already work. Ideally, it's going to be a spinning reel in the 2,500 to 3,000 size range, a medium action rod. I do like to have a fairly sensitive rod, so a nice graphite rod that you can feel those little hits from the Seaperch is great, but mostly whatever you have. And then all the other hardware you'll need is a bead and a snap swivel, and then a little line cutter to cut your line with if you're using braid. This particular setup happens to be, I believe it's a Cast King Valiant Eagle. This one's a 4,000 size reel. It's a little overkill for striped sea perch. I use it for a lot of different things. So I have used it for this. I've got, I think, a Daiwa BG in the 3,000 size coming that I'm going to use instead. I'll likely use this same rod. This is an Okuma Solilo. I think the reel was about 60 bucks from Amazon. The rod was about 60 bucks from Walmart. I do like 2-piece rods in case I have to break them down and put them in my SUV when I'm traveling. This happens to be 20-pound braid because I do fish for a lot of things with this, up to and including salmon. And again, if I were dedicating a specific rod and reel to just striped sea perch, I'd probably have just a 2500 series spinning reel, a reasonably sensitive rod, and either 15-pound braid or 10 to 12-pound mono or fluorocarbon mainline. So at the terminal end, all you need is a bead and a snap swivel. I don't remember which snap swivel this is. This bead, it's a Bomac soft glow. It's a soft bead. It's a green glow soft bead. I think it was about $3 for 25 of them, so around 12 cents each. They come in a hard plastic pack. I put them in a little Ziploc bag because it's easier to get in and out of my little tackle boxes. Again, I don't remember which snap swivel this one is. These Eagle Claw ones work fine, just a ball bearing, and it doesn't even have to be ball bearing. But this size one works fine. I think it was around $3 for 3 of these, so about $1 each, so not too bad. When you're choosing the bead, the size of the bead needs to be as small as it can be and not go through that eye on the tip of the rod. So that will keep the snap swivel from getting reeled up into there, which will of course protect that insert from getting popped out. It'll also keep you from having to deal with that on the water and save time untangling. So really simple. You can see that one just barely won't go through, and that really is all you need for rod and reel. And like I mentioned, the hardware you choose isn't terribly critical. If it can handle anything around an 8 to 12 pound main line, it's fine. Okay, for the drop shot rigs that I use, that's also a relatively simple setup. I've got everything here that you'll need to set it up, and also the only 2 tools that you'll need, and I'll explain those as I get there. So first, with the line, I try to use somewhere around an 8-pound line. This happens to be P-Line Fluoro Clear, an 8-pound test. I spooled one of my other spinning reels with it and had it extra, so that's why I'm using this. Anything around 8 pound or so, and mono or fluorocarbon is fine. Again, just like with the choice of the rod and reel, it's not super critical. Usually when you find the striped perch, they're not the pickiest when it comes to biting. So The amount of line, I like to have 3 feet above the line, so 3 feet between the snap swivel and the hook, and then 12 inches from the hook down to the bottom where the weight is. So that means there's 4 feet total of line that I need to have in use there, and I usually use about 4 inches on each end to tie the loop, so that's 56 inches total of line. So if you look here, I've already tied this up, and I'll explain how, but I've got 12 inches below the line, so sorry, below the hook, and 36 inches above. So this one's already tied. I didn't want to bore everyone watching me try to tie this little 8-pound line with my relatively large hands. So the hook is tied on with a Palomar knot. I'm not going to go through demonstrating that. There are lots of videos on YouTube about how to tie a Palomar knot. There is one modification that I use though. Once I'm done tying the Palomar knot, I want to make sure that that hook stands out perpendicular to the line. So once I'm done, take the tag end that goes down to the weight and put it back through the eye of the hook from the point side of the hook down to the other side. That way when the line is pulling down, the hook will be perpendicular to it. So on the bottom end, where the weight's going to be, just tie a simple loop. So overhand knot, as long as the loop is big enough to go around the body of that bank weight, you're fine. But on the other end, the one that goes to the snap swivel, it's even less critical. As long as there's enough of a loop for you to get the snap swivel through, it's fine also. I do like to double overhand this end, because this end does need to be stronger. This is the one that connects us to the hook. And as far as choice of hooks, what I'm using here is a standard number 4 Aberdeen hook, instead of what I started with, which was the barbless bait holder hooks. So these worked relatively well as far as getting the fish on, although occasionally sometimes the fish would bite the sandworm just below the hook, and I would lose the bait and not get the fish. So you can see it's a 2-inch sandworm, which is about 3 times as long as that hook is. And that got a little frustrating. And also, this little hook would go down into the fish's mouth, and it would be really hard to get the hook out. So if the fish were really biting and I needed to get the hook out of one and get back in the water to catch the next one, that was a little frustrating. So instead of those now, I use these standard Aberdeen hooks. These happen to come in some hook assortment. I think it's 150 hooks that I paid about $4 for. But these hooks work great. They are longer. They don't hold the bait up quite as well as the bait holders because they don't have the little cutouts. But the length of it does help. And if you'll notice here, this hook is much longer, and therefore it gets farther down the body of the sandworm. So this lets me get a better hookup ratio to bites, and also once I have the fish at the kayak, I usually have at least part of the hook sticking out of the mouth so I can grab it, twist it out, fish is off. And now notice that these hooks are not barbless, so I do have to take the little pliers and squeeze down the barbs, because where I fish, all hooks have to be barbless. So that's all it takes. So now that hook's ready to go. So I'd already done that to this one. So the last thing I want to cover here is the weights. So I do use a bank sinker instead of the standard drop shot weight, and there's 2 reasons for that. First is that it's really hard to find drop shot weights in the size that I need, because the smallest weight that I use is a 1/2 ounce, and there aren't very many drop shot sinkers readily available that are 1/2 ounce or bigger. I also have 1 ounce that I use, and when I can find them, they're more expensive. So these drop shot weights, which are still fairly slim vertically and they don't get snagged up very often, work just fine. So the way you use it is take the loop, put it through the eye at the top of the weight, and just go ahead and pull it all the way through. So now you have the loop sticking out. Open it up, put it back over the body of the weight, and then just pull it up. So the loop of the line actually loops right around the bottom here. It stands vertically when it's in the water, and if the current is too strong or the waves are too strong or whatever, or if you want to take it off, all you have to do, pull the line back through, pull it over the bottom, and right off you go. So easy enough. Okay, so the last thing to show is how to actually rig this gulp sandworm, and I prefer the 2-inch camo colored sandworm, how to rig it onto the hook. So like I mentioned earlier, I do like these long shank hooks. The way I do it is I hold it by the bend of the hook, start down from the top into the body of the sandworm. So what I want to do is try to keep pushing it through and keep it as close to the center of the body of the sandworm as possible. Now I'm going to run it down to probably a little more than halfway, somewhere around halfway through the body, and then turn and bring it out the side. Then once I push this up on the body, I want it right up to the top. And what this does is put the point of the hook relatively far back the body of the sandworm, much farther than what I could get with the little standard shank length of bait holder hook before. And having it that way, when I'm pulling on the weight, see how it sits horizontal in the water because it's perpendicular to the line? This is what I want. So then when I'm dancing it back and forth, that entices the sea perch to come over, grab it, sea perch comes in, the hook's far enough back that it's very rare that I'll actually lose the bait without getting the hook in the mouth of the sea perch. Fish on. Once I get it up to the kayak, I usually have at least a little bit of this hook shank sticking out. I usually don't even need pliers, and I can turn the hook out and go back and get the next one. Since I do have to use barbless hooks, it is very easy to get the hook out, and if I have to use pliers to do it, it commonly tears up the bait, and I like to get multiple fish per bait. So if I can use my fingers and turn it out, all the better. So that's what it should look like in the water, horizontal, and then with the weight up and down, it's just going to be oscillating back and forth in the water. That's evidently very enticing and very appetizing to the striped sea perch. So this, I know when I began this video I talked about having it be easy and cheap to catch striped sea perch. Now I do acknowledge that these gulp sandworms, and I think these are around $6 for 24, are relatively expensive when it comes to bait. They're even more expensive than fresh shrimp and things like that. But with fresh shrimp, you have to deal with refrigeration, getting them relatively close to the time that you are going to use them. With these, you just have them in the tackle box ready to go anytime you can break away and go fishing. They're super tough. I usually catch 4 or 5 fish at least for every single one of these, and I don't have to deal with all the hassle of refrigeration of shrimp or brining it or anything else. These are just ready to go. They're super tough, and I've had much better luck on these than any other bait I've tried. Okay, hopefully we'll see you out on the water for the next portion of the video and show all of this in action. Well, here I am, January 21st, 2019, Golden Gardens. Salmon closed yesterday, but I wasn't catching very many of those anyway, so I'm out here looking for flounders and hopefully striped perch. Need to finish up a striped perch video I started with the how-to steps at home, so hopefully it'll be a good day. You can see the weather, A little cloudy, probably about 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and couldn't be calmer. Should be a good day. So here we are out in Puget Sound, Shoal Bay, just on the outside of the breakwater. This is a good place to look for striped perch. So there's a rock pile here. As it hits the sandy bottom that's a little flatter, right along that edge is usually where the striped perch will hang out. So let's see if they're here today. If you're noticing, the rig actually added one more hook, about another foot up. I can show how to do that later. The bite was a little slow, so I'm using this instead. Let's see if they're here. You can see I threw it just right off the bow. Let it sink down. We're at a very high tide today, so I'm about 32 feet of water. So that should be right at the bottom of that rock wall. Let's see if they're here. Oh, I already got a hit. Right there. Just that quick. Nice. That easily. There you go. Striped perch. Easy enough. Okay, let's try one more time. Let's see how long it takes to get a hit. Dropping straight down. We'll count from the time the weight hits the bottom. There we go. 1, 2, took 2. So this is 2 fish in a row. The sandworm that got hit was the one closer to the bottom. See? Another nice sized striped perch. You just gotta find them right here at the bottom of this rock wall. It's the place. There you go. Okay, this one you can see almost swallowed it. There's just a tiny bit of that hook that's still sticking out. If we'd used a shorter shank hook, we wouldn't be able to get to it at all. So just gently work it out. That fish is saved. We don't have to re-rig. That's why I use those Aberdeen hooks with a bit longer shank. Yep, here's another one. That one's on the bottom one again. I think out of the last 5 fish, 4 have been on the bottom. It's a joy barbless hook, you just tip them out there. The last 5 fish, 4 have been on the bottom sandworm and only 1 on the top. So that's pretty clear that the way we rigged them at home is probably the best way. It's just that one hook that's 1 foot off the bottom. A little far out the bottom of the rock wall, so we'll see. Still get a hit out here. We may have to go in a bit. Too far out. Let's go just a little bit forward. Yeah, a little too far from the rocks. Toss it in a little closer. Pretty close to the bottom. I still may be a few feet away from the bottom of the rocks. Good time at the bottom. Okay, we're on the bottom now. got a little sunshine breaking through the clouds. Beautiful day. Yep, I think I'm still a little too far from the rocks. A little closer yet. Haven't seen it better than the one before. It's the same spot. Oh, that was it. Placement matters. Here we go, there's another one. And another one on the bottom. Alright, there we go. Another perch. Quick and easy. That's how much difference it makes getting right up at the bottom of that rock wall. So I was a few further feet out and I got nothing. As soon as I got right to the bottom of the rock wall, fish on. So I think I've caught about 4 fish on this one sandworm. Let's see if I can get another one. It's shredded though. It's a little ugly, but we'll see. Might be a little too close, we'll see. Settle in. Okay, we're on bottom. I think. Yep. Nope, we're not. But I already have a fish anyway. Yep, there's another one. And that's on that same sandworm that I've already caught several on. I might have lost it this time. Yeah, I believe I did. Finally lost it. Oh well. Alright. Another beautiful perch who's really eager to get back in the water. There you go. Well, that shows how to catch the perch. I think I'm going to catch a few more of these and then head out and try to catch some flounder, but it's a pretty easy rig. The weight on the bottom, one hook that you want to stick out vertically, horizontally in the water, which is perpendicular to the line, and thread the sandworm on it, drop it at the edge of the rock wall. You should be catching perch. They seem to be plentiful here around the breakwaters around western Washington. Easy enough. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. If I can't answer it, I'll try to find someone who can. Thanks. See you next video.